My wife withdrew $260,000 I had saved for 8 years to buy a house with her lover. When I found out, my wife laughed. Thanks for your naivety. Your money has now secured me and my new husband's bright future. And her lover added, a guy like you would have wasted it anyway. I couldn't hold back my laughter. Because the money they took was actually, you know that feeling when you bite into what you think is chocolate chip ice cream, only to discover it's actually mint chocolate chip? Yeah, that sickening moment when reality sucker punches your expectations? Well, multiply that by about $250,000, and you'll understand how I felt staring at my phone screen at 11:47 p.m. on what started as just another Tuesday from hell. Let me back up. The evening began exactly how you'd expect, with me sitting across from Mr. Henderson, a potential client who insisted on taking me to the kind of steakhouse where they charge you $40 for a piece of meat that tastes like it was marinated in disappointment and grilled by someone who clearly peaked in high school. The guy spent 2 hours explaining why his revolutionary app for rating public restrooms was going to be the next Facebook, while I nodded and smiled like my mortgage depended on it. Which, considering my financial situation, it basically did. You see, Henderson had wheezed between bites of his tragically overcooked ribeye. People need to know if a bathroom has adequate toilet paper before they commit to using it. It's about transparency in the defecation industry. I kid you not, those were his actual words. The defecation industry. I should have walked out right there, but rent doesn't pay itself, and my savings account wasn't exactly what you'd call robust. By the time I escaped that culinary nightmare, I smelled like a combination of charred beef, Henderson's cologne, which I'm pretty sure was just Axe body spray from 2003, and the lingering aroma of my own crushed dreams. The drive home was a symphony of self-pity, complete with me practicing different ways to tell my wife Serena that the Henderson deal was probably going to fall through like every other sure thing this month. Here's where it gets fun. You know how sometimes you do things out of pure masochistic habit? Like checking your ex's Instagram or reading the comments section on political posts. Well, checking my banking app after a disappointing day had become my personal form of digital self-harm. Just a quick peek to confirm that yes, I was still poor. But hey, at least I wasn't getting any purr, right? Wrong. So incredibly, spectacularly wrong. I was sitting in my car in the driveway, engine still running, when I opened the app. The loading screen took forever, probably the universe's way of building dramatic tension. And then, there it was. Or rather, there it wasn't. Balance, $0. Not $260. Not $2,600. Zero. Absolute, soul-crushing zero. Now, I'm not typically the type to panic. I'm more of a steady decline into quiet desperation kind of guy. But seeing that goose egg where my life savings used to be, that triggered something primal. I literally said, what the actual hell, out loud to my empty car, like my 2016 Honda Civic was going to provide some logical explanation for this financial Bermuda Triangle situation. My first thought was identity theft. Had to be. Some scammer in Nigeria was probably buying gold-plated toilet seats with my hard-earned cash right now. Or maybe it was a bank error. Those happen all the time in movies, right? Some overworked intern accidentally moved my money into Jeff Bezos's account instead of mine. These things happen. They have to happen. So I did what any rational person would do. I refreshed the app. Because clearly, the solution to having no money was to check if I had no money again, but harder this time. The little spinning wheel mocked me for about 10 seconds before confirming what I already knew but refused to accept. Still zero. Still completely, utterly, devastatingly zero. I refreshed it again, and one more time, because third time's the charm, right? Nope. My money was gone like my hairline, gradually, then suddenly, and probably never coming back. That's when I called the bank, at nearly midnight. Because nothing says stable human being like calling customer service at the witching hour to hyperventilate about your empty bank account. The hold music was some jazzy elevator nonsense that felt wildly inappropriate for my current existential crisis. After what felt like 17 hours, but was probably more like 7 minutes, a cheerful voice chirped in my ear. Hi there. This is Brittany with customer service. How can I make your banking experience amazing tonight? Amazing. Right. I wanted to ask Brittany if she'd ever had $250,000 just vanish into thin air, but instead I managed to croak out something about needing to check on a large withdrawal from my account. Oh, sure thing. Let me just pull up your account. Can I get your account number? I rattled off the numbers that I'd memorized like my own social security number, because checking this account had become my favorite form of masochistic entertainment over the past few years. Okay, I see the transaction you're referring to. The $260,000 withdrawal made earlier today at 2:47 p.m. Yes, that was processed correctly. Processed correctly? I squeaked. I didn't authorize any withdrawal. This has to be fraud. Oh no. Sir, I can see here that this withdrawal was made legally by someone with joint access to your account. Let me see. Yes, the withdrawal was made by. I could hear typing. Serena Mitchell. Is that your wife? And there it was. The other shoe, dropping from orbit and landing squarely on my face. Joint access. That thing Serena had begged me for about 6 months ago. Just in case of emergencies, she'd said, batting her eyelashes and using that voice she reserved for when she wanted something expensive. What if something happens to you and I can't access our money? She'd argued. It's just practical, honey. Our money. Right. Our money that I'd earned through 8 years of eating ramen noodles for dinner, skipping vacations, and convincing myself that fun was a free trial of Netflix. Our money that came from me working 60-hour weeks while she found herself through various expensive hobbies like pottery classes and wine tastings and whatever the hell chakra alignment therapy was supposed to be. Sir? Sir, are you still there? Yeah, I managed. Yeah, I'm here. Is there anything else I can help you with tonight? What could Brittany possibly do? Wave her customer service magic wand and undo the fact that my wife had just cleaned out my life savings? Explain why the person I'd shared a bed with for 5 years had decided that grand theft was a reasonable Tuesday afternoon activity? No, I said. No, I think you've helped enough. I hung up and sat there in my driveway, staring at my house. The house where my wife was probably sleeping peacefully after spending $250,000 of my money on God knows what. The porch light was on, casting this warm, welcoming glow that now felt more like a trap than a beacon of home. 8 years. 8 years of scrimping and saving, of telling myself that building a nest egg was more important than actually living. 8 years of skipped movies, declined dinner invitations, and generic brand everything. All gone. Poof. Vanished like my trust in the institution of marriage. But here's the thing about rock bottom. At least you know which way is up. The drive from my driveway to my front door, all 30 feet of it, felt like the longest journey of my life. You know that feeling when you're walking towards something you absolutely don't want to deal with? Like heading to the dentist for a root canal, or approaching your boss's office after accidentally sending that email about him to the entire company. Yeah, multiply that by about 1 million and add the special seasoning of financial betrayal. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with my keys. Not from fear, mind you, from pure, concentrated rage mixed with the kind of disbelief that makes you question whether you're actually awake or trapped in some twisted nightmare where your spouse turns into a cartoon villain. I kept hoping I'd wake up in my car, drooling on the steering wheel, and this whole thing would just be my subconscious working through my anxiety about Henderson's stupid bathroom app. No such luck. I pushed open the front door, and the first thing that hit me wasn't the sight. It was the sound. Laughter. Not just any laughter, but the kind of carefree, champagne bubble giggling that people do when they think they've just pulled off the heist of the century. It was coming from my living room, mixed with some smooth jazz that I definitely didn't remember putting on our Spotify playlist. And then I saw them. Picture this, your living room, the one you've been paying rent on for 3 years, transformed into what looked like the set of some low-budget romance movie. Candles everywhere, and I mean everywhere. My coffee table, which usually held nothing more exciting than unpaid bills and takeout containers, was now sporting what appeared to be an entire Williams-Sonoma display. There was actual wine, not the $7 bottle we usually split while watching Netflix, but something in a bottle that probably cost more than my car payment. And there, lounging on my couch like Cleopatra holding court, was Serena, my wife, the woman who, just this morning, had kissed me goodbye and reminded me to pick up milk on the way home. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something silky and red that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her hair was done up in one of those effortless-looking styles that actually takes 3 hours and half a bottle of hairspray to achieve. But here's the kicker. She wasn't alone. Sprawled next to her, taking up about 2/3 of my sectional sofa with his arms spread like he was claiming territory, was a guy who looked like he'd been assembled in a laboratory specifically designed to make regular humans feel inadequate. This had to be Bradley. I'd heard whispers about him at Serena's work parties, seen his Instagram perfect jawline in group photos, where he somehow always managed to position himself just close enough to my wife to make me uncomfortable. The dude was shirtless, in my living room, on my couch, shirtless, like some kind of discount Magic Mike who'd gotten lost on his way to a bachelorette party. His chest was so perfectly sculpted that it looked airbrushed, and he had that kind of tan that only comes from either extensive travel to tropical locations or an unhealthy relationship with a tanning bed. My money was on the tanning bed, because nobody gets biceps like that from lying on beaches drinking piña coladas. "Oh, hey, honey," Serena called out, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Like I regularly came home to find my wife entertaining half-naked Ken dolls in our living room. Perfect timing. We were just celebrating. Celebrating. Right. I stood there in my doorway, still smelling like Henderson's overpriced steakhouse, still processing the fact that my bank account had been reduced to pocket change, and they were celebrating. Celebrating what exactly? I managed to croak out, though I already knew the answer. The same way you know you're about to throw up right before it happens, that inevitable, stomach-dropping certainty. Serena took a long, deliberate sip of her wine that I now realized had probably been purchased with my money, and smiled. Not her usual smile, but something colder, sharper. The kind of smile that sharks probably flash right before they bite. "Oh, just the beginning of my new life," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth ache. "Thanks for your naivety, honey. Your money has now secured me and my new husband's bright future." New husband. New husband. I blinked hard, sure that I'd misheard. Maybe the stress was making me hallucinate. Maybe this was all some elaborate prank show, and Ashton Kutcher was going to jump out from behind my bookshelf any second now. But no, Bradley, my wife's apparently new husband, chose that moment to chime in with his 2 cents. His voice was exactly what you'd expect from someone who looked like he practiced smoldering in the mirror every morning. Smooth, confident, and absolutely dripping with condescension. "Yeah, man, a guy like you would have just wasted it anyway," he said, adjusting his position on my couch like he owned the place. "Probably would have blown it all on some boring mutual funds or paid off your student loans or something equally pathetic. A guy like me. A guy like me who'd worked his ass off for 8 years to save that money. A guy like me who'd skipped countless dinners out, vacations, and even basic luxuries to build something that was supposed to represent security, maybe even a down payment on a house someday. A guy like me who'd apparently been married to a sociopath this entire time without realizing it. The silence stretched out between us like a rubber band about to snap. Serena and Bradley were looking at me expectantly, like they were waiting for me to either explode or break down crying. Maybe both. There was this gleam in Serena's eyes that I'd never seen before, triumph mixed with something that looked almost like hunger. And that's when something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like ice on a pond, that sharp sound that happens right before everything gives way. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle. A real, honest-to-God belly laugh that started somewhere deep in my chest and worked its way up through my throat until it filled the entire room. It was loud. It was sharp. It was the kind of laugh that makes people take a step back and wonder if you've finally, completely lost your mind. Because here's the thing that Serena and her discount Adonis didn't know. Here's the joke that was so good, so perfectly ironic, that I couldn't help but appreciate it even as it was happening to me. The $260,000 they'd stolen, the money they thought represented my entire life's work, the nest egg they figured would fund their new happily ever after, that wasn't my money anymore. Not really. That was my bait. And they just swallowed it whole. You want to know the beautiful thing about being underestimated? People show you exactly who they are when they think you're too stupid to notice. And Serena, bless her scheming little heart, had been showing me who she was for months. I was just too busy playing the role of devoted husband to pay attention to the script. Let me paint you a picture of how this whole thing actually went down. See, while Serena and her discount Magic Mike were sitting there looking smug as hell, thinking they'd just pulled off the financial crime of the century, I was standing in my doorway having what you might call an epiphany. You know those moments in movies where everything suddenly clicks into place and the hero realizes he's been 3 steps ahead all along? Yeah, This was nothing like that. This was more like finally understanding why your dog keeps staring at the corner of the room. Turns out there actually was something there the whole time. Here's what really happened. About 6 months ago, when Serena started her whole "We Need Joint Access for Emergencies" campaign, something in my gut told me this wasn't about emergencies at all. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, or call it what happens when you've been married to someone long enough to recognize their "I'm planning something" voice. She used the same tone when she convinced me we needed a more expensive cable package for the educational channels, which she then used exclusively to watch reality TV shows about rich housewives throwing drinks at each other. So I did what any reasonable person would do when they suspect their spouse might be plotting financial mutiny. I got creative with my accounting. You see, what Serena thought she knew about our finances was exactly what I wanted her to know. She saw me obsessing over our house savings account, the one I'd check religiously every morning while drinking my coffee. She watched me celebrate every deposit, stress about every withdrawal, and generally act like this one account represented our entire financial future. Hell, I even left the banking app open on my laptop sometimes, just so she could accidentally on purpose catch a glimpse of that beautiful, growing balance. What she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the house savings account was basically a decoy, a financial red herring, the world's most expensive mousetrap, if you will. While Serena was busy planning her great heist, I'd been quietly building my real financial fortress somewhere else entirely. You know how magicians work, right? They get you focused on their right hand while their left hand is doing all the actual magic. Same principle, except instead of pulling rabbits out of hats, I was pulling my actual money out of places where cheating wives couldn't find it. The real money. The money I'd been accumulating through side consulting gigs, freelance work, and investments that Serena never bothered to ask about. Lived in accounts she didn't even know existed. A business LLC I'd set up 2 years ago for tax purposes. A retirement account from an old job that I'd been rolling over and contributing to quietly. Even a savings account at a completely different bank, one where I'd been stashing cash from every client dinner expense reimbursement and forgot to mention it bonus. See, Serena had this adorable habit of tuning out whenever I talked about work. The moment I started discussing anything that involved numbers or financial planning or, God forbid, actual responsibility, her eyes would glaze over and she'd start scrolling through Instagram. So when I mentioned opening an LLC for consulting work, she just nodded and made that hum sound that wives make when they're not actually listening. When I talked about rolling over my 401k, she literally yawned and asked if we could talk about something more interesting, like whether we should get premium Netflix. This selective attention span of hers turned out to be my greatest asset. While she was busy cataloging every deposit and withdrawal from our joint checking and the house savings, I was quietly building multiple streams of income and saving strategies that she couldn't even see, let alone steal from. The beautiful part? I didn't even have to hide it. I just had to be boring about it. Every time she asked about money, I'd lead with the account she cared about, the big, visible, tempting pile of cash that she thought represented my entire life's work. We've got about $260,000 saved up now, I'd tell her, and watch her eyes light up like Christmas morning. She never asked about the other accounts because she never thought to ask. In her mind, I was just some boring guy with one boring savings account who was too simple to have any kind of sophisticated financial strategy. God, the irony. She thought I was the fool. For months, I watched her behavior change in tiny ways that she probably thought were subtle. The way she started taking her phone calls in the other room. How she suddenly developed an interest in girls' nights out that seemed to happen every weekend. The mysterious expenses that she'd explain away with vague references to self-care and investing in myself. And my personal favorite, how she started asking casual questions about our financial situation, like she was just making conversation and definitely not planning anything devious. Honey, she'd say while we were watching TV, hypothetically, if something happened to you, would I be able to access our savings? And I'd explain the joint access situation while internally marveling at how she thought she was being clever. It was like watching someone plan a surprise party for themselves, adorable in its transparency. The best part was watching her get more and more confident as the balance in the decoy account grew. Every few weeks, I'd make a big show of checking it, maybe even mention how we were getting closer to our dream house goal. She'd get this little smile that she thought she was hiding, like she was already spending the money in her head. And today, she finally took the bait. The $260,000 they thought they'd stolen? That was exactly what I'd put there for them to find. Not a penny more, not a penny less. It was like leaving a $20 bill on the sidewalk to see if someone would pick it up, except the 20 was $250,000, and the someone was my wife and her boy toy. The really twisted part? I almost felt proud of her for actually going through with it. It takes a special kind of commitment to betrayal to clean out your husband's life savings on a Tuesday afternoon and then come home to celebrate with your new husband like you just won the lottery. Too bad for them. The lottery ticket was a fake. You know what they say about revenge being a dish best served cold? Well, they're wrong. Revenge is actually best served systematically, with a side of petty vindication and a tall glass of "I told you so." And lucky for me, I had years of pent-up financial resentment to work with. See, while Serena and Bradley were probably upstairs in my bed. Yeah, I wasn't ready to think about that part yet. I was downstairs having the most productive night of my entire marriage. Armed with my laptop, a questionable amount of leftover Chinese takeout, and the kind of focused rage that usually requires prescription medication to achieve, I embarked on what I like to call Operation Cut the Cord. Let me give you some context here. For the past 5 years of our marriage, I'd been what you might generously call the financial backbone of our relationship. More accurately, I was the human ATM that Serena had married and programmed to dispense cash on demand. Every month, like clockwork, my paycheck would get deposited and then systematically drained by what Serena called our shared expenses. Our shared expenses. Right. Because apparently, her $200 a month gym membership, where she mostly took Instagram selfies and workout clothes, was essential to our household's well-being. And that subscription box service that delivered organic, gluten-free, locally sourced dog treats for the dog we didn't have, totally necessary for our spiritual growth, or whatever the hell she claimed that month. The woman had subscriptions to services I didn't even know existed. There was something called FabFitFun that apparently sent her a box of random crap every 3 months for only $179.99. When I asked what was in it, she'd wave her hand dismissively and say it was lifestyle essentials, which, from what I could tell, meant overpriced face masks and jewelry that turned her fingers green. Then there was her yoga studio membership. Not just any yoga studio, mind you, but the boutique place downtown where they charged $45 per class, and the instructor had a man bun and spoke exclusively in whispers about aligning your chakras with your authentic self. Serena went maybe twice a month, which means each yoga session cost us roughly the same as a nice dinner out. But hey, you can't put a price on spiritual enlightenment, right? Don't even get me started on her online shopping habits. The woman had Amazon Prime, but that wasn't enough. She also had memberships to about 15 different clothing subscription services that would send her curated selections based on her personal style profile. Her personal style, apparently, was expensive things that get worn once and then shoved in the back of the closet. And the beauty products. Jesus Christ, the beauty products. She had subscriptions to Sephora, Ulta, Birchbox, Ipsy, and something called Glossybox that sounded like a medical condition. Every month, packages would arrive like she was running some kind of cosmetics distribution center out of our spare bedroom. When I pointed out that she already owned enough lipstick to paint a small house, she explained that these were investment pieces for her personal brand. Her personal brand, by the way, was wife of a guy who pays for everything. But here's what really got me. She had convinced me that all of this was normal, that this was just what modern couples did. Everyone has these expenses, she'd say whenever I questioned a particularly ridiculous charge. It's called self-care, and it's important for my mental health. And because I'm apparently a spineless pushover who confused supportive husband with human credit card, I went along with it. Every month, I'd sit down with our bills and feel this little twist in my stomach as I calculated how much of my paycheck was going towards Serena's self-care. But I told myself this was what marriage looked like. This was partnership. This was love. Well, guess what? Love doesn't steal your life savings and then celebrate with another man in your living room. Love doesn't clean out your bank account and then have the audacity to call it securing our future. And love definitely doesn't sit on your couch, half naked and smug, telling you that you would have wasted your own money anyway. So at 12:47 a.m., fueled by rage and lo mein noodles, I began the most satisfying administrative task of my adult life. First up, the gym membership. You know, the one where she mostly took selfies and occasionally pretended to use the elliptical while scrolling through TikTok. I logged into the account, because of course I was the one paying for it, and hit cancel membership with more satisfaction than I'd felt in years. The website asked if I was sure I wanted to cancel and offered me 3 months free to reconsider. I'm sure. I clicked. I'm really sure. Next, all 17 of her subscription services. FabFitFun. Canceled. The organic dog treat service? Canceled. That weird monthly sock subscription that sent her artisanal hosiery from around the world? Canceled with extreme prejudice. The yoga studio was next. I actually had to call them because their cancellation process was more complicated than applying for a mortgage. The night manager who answered sounded like he'd been expecting my call. "Yeah, man, we've been getting a lot of these lately," he said in a voice that suggested he smoked way too much weed to be handling financial transactions. "Divorce? Something like that," I replied. "Bummer, dude. Want me to put her on a payment plan instead?" "No," I said. "I want you to put her on a figure out her own damn payment plan. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. See, Serena had convinced me years ago that we needed the premium internet package because she worked from home sometimes and needed reliable connectivity for her creative projects. Her creative projects, as far as I could tell, consisted mainly of online shopping and posting Instagram stories about her morning smoothies. We were paying $89.99 a month for internet speeds that could probably run a small tech company. Also, Serena could stream Netflix in 4K while simultaneously scrolling through Instagram and online shopping. The woman was a multitasking champion when it came to wasting bandwidth. So I called Comcast at 1:30 in the morning, because if you're going to have a mental breakdown, you might as well do it during off-peak hours when the customer service wait times are shorter. "I'd like to cancel my internet service," I told the representative. "Effective when? How about right now?" There was a pause. "Sir, it's almost 2 a.m. Is that a problem?" "Well, no, but..." "Great. Cut it off." And just like that, our house went dark. Digitally speaking, no more Instagram. No more online shopping. No more streaming her stupid reality shows about rich women throwing wine at each other. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. Text message from Serena, sent at 6:47 a.m. "Hey, why isn't the Wi-Fi working?" I took a sip of my coffee, the good coffee I'd bought with my own money from my secret account, and typed back, "Try meditating instead." Her response came back in about 30 seconds. "This isn't funny. I have things to do today." "So do I," I replied. Like changing all the passwords. There's something deeply satisfying about watching karma work its magic in real time. It's like watching a perfectly choreographed dance, except instead of graceful pirouettes, you get the beautiful sight of someone's entire world crashing down in slow motion. And let me tell you, Bradley's world was about to experience a Category 5 shitstorm, courtesy of his new devoted wife and her incredibly trusting ex-husband. See, while Serena was probably explaining to her boy toy why the internet wasn't working and their credit cards were mysteriously declining at Starbucks, I was having my morning coffee and contemplating my next move. That's when I remembered something that brought a smile to my face for the first time in about 12 hours. Bradley's precious car. Oh, that car. The man was more attached to that vehicle than most people are to their firstborn children. It was a 2022 BMW M4 convertible in what he called Alpine White, but what I called, "Look at me, I'm compensating for something white." He'd bought it about 6 months ago, right around the time he started sniffing around my wife, and he treated that car like it was made of crystallized testosterone and unicorn tears. Every time I'd seen him at Serena's work events, back when I was still playing the role of oblivious husband, he'd find a way to work that car into the conversation within the first 5 minutes. "Oh, you drive a Honda? That's practical. I just picked up my new BMW. Yeah, it's the M4 convertible. Alpine White. 503 horsepower. Goes 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Not that I'm bragging or anything, but the guy would literally walk people out to the parking lot to show it off, like he was giving tours of the goddamn Sistine Chapel. He'd point out features that nobody asked about. "See, this is carbon fiber. And these are the performance tires. Oh, and check out these custom leather seats. They're heated and cooled. I mean, congratulations, Bradley. You bought a car that costs more than most people's annual salary. You want a trophy? A parade? Maybe we should call the Nobel Committee and see if there's a prize for most expensive midlife crisis on four wheels. But here's the thing about Bradley and his precious status symbol. And this is where the story gets really good. The paperwork was still in my name. Let me explain how this particular stroke of genius came about. About 8 months ago, Serena came to me with this sob story about Bradley's temporary financial situation. Apparently, his credit had taken a hit due to some misunderstanding with his previous business partners, which, in hindsight, probably means he either got sued or screwed someone over and they sued him right back. Either way, his credit score was somewhere between absolutely terrible and might as well pay cash for everything for the rest of your life. But Bradley really wanted this car. And Serena, being the loving and supportive, whatever she was to him at that point, really wanted Bradley to have this car. So she came to me with those big doe eyes and that voice she used when she needed a favor. "Honey," she said, "Bradley is having some temporary credit issues, and there's this car he really needs for work. Would you be willing to co-sign for him? Just until he gets his financial situation sorted out. It would mean so much to him and to me." And because I was apparently born yesterday and raised by wolves who never taught me to recognize manipulation, I said yes. Of course, honey. Anything to help a friend. A friend. Jesus, the irony could choke a horse. So there I was, 6 months ago, sitting in a BMW dealership pretending to be the supportive husband helping out his wife's friend, while Bradley test drove his dream car and talked about torque ratios like he was discussing quantum physics. The sales guy kept looking between the three of us with this confused expression, probably trying to figure out why the guy with the worst credit score in the room was the one picking out leather seat colors. "Just to be clear," the salesman had said, "the loan will be in your name, Mr. Mitchell, but Mr. Bradley here will be the primary driver?" "That's right," I nodded, signing papers like the world's most expensive doormat. "It's for his work." His work. Right. As far as I could tell, Bradley's work consisted mainly of taking shirtless gym selfies and sliding into the DMs of married women. But hey, apparently that required 503 horsepower and carbon fiber accents. The best part was watching Bradley's face when the keys were handed over. You'd have thought he'd just won the lottery and been crowned king of the world simultaneously. He actually got a little emotional, which was both pathetic and hilarious. "Man, I can't thank you enough," he'd said, shaking my hand with both of his like I'd just donated a kidney. "This means everything to me." Everything to him. Those were his exact words. So this morning, sipping my coffee and contemplating the beautiful irony of the situation, I realized that Bradley's everything was still legally mine. The loan was in my name. The insurance was in my name. Hell, even the registration was in my name. Bradley might have the keys, but I own the paper trail. And paper trails, my friends, are powerful things. I called the tow truck company at 8:30 a.m. Not just any tow truck company. I went with Big Mike's Recovery Services, because Big Mike didn't mess around and he didn't ask unnecessary questions. I'd used them once before when my neighbor's teenage son kept parking in my driveway, and they'd been efficient, professional, and thoroughly unsympathetic to sob stories. "Yeah, I need a vehicle recovered," I told Big Mike himself. "It's my car, but someone else has been driving it. I've got all the paperwork." "What kind of car are we talking about?" Mike asked in a voice that sounded like he gargled with gravel for fun. "BMW M4 convertible. Alpine white." Mike whistled. "Nice ride. Where's it parked?" I gave him my address. "Should be in the driveway. Guy's probably still sleeping. We'll be there in 20. And they were. I watched from my kitchen window as Big Mike's flatbed truck pulled up to my house at exactly 8:52 a.m. Two guys got out, consulted some paperwork, and started hooking up the BMW like they were defusing a bomb. Methodical, professional, and completely unstoppable. That's when I heard the commotion upstairs. Shouting. Serena's voice, high and panicked. "Bradley! Bradley, wake up! Someone's stealing your car." More shouting. Footsteps thundering down the stairs. The front door slamming open. I poured myself another cup of coffee and wandered over to the window to watch the show. Bradley burst out of my house wearing nothing but boxers and the kind of panic you usually see in disaster movies. His perfect hair was sticking up in 12 different directions, and his spray tan had somehow managed to stain my pillowcases, which was going to be another conversation entirely. "Hey, Hey, he screamed at the tow truck drivers. That's my car. You can't take my car. Big Mike looked up from his paperwork, completely unimpressed. You, Bradley? Yes. That's my car. Nah. Mike replied, holding up the registration. This here says it belongs to. He squinted at the paper. Mitchell. You Mitchell. Bradley's face went through about 17 different colors, none of them found in nature. There's been a mistake. Call the owner. Call Mitchell. He'll tell you. Big Mike looked over at my house, where I was standing in the window, clearly visible, drinking my coffee and giving him a little wave. I think he already did, Mike said. And with that, Bradley's everything was loaded onto the flatbed and driven away, leaving him standing in my driveway in his underwear, looking like someone had just explained quantum physics to a goldfish. I sold that car 3 hours later to a dealership across town. Used the money to buy myself a new laptop, upgrade my home office setup, and purchase the most ridiculously comfortable reclining chair I could find. One with cup holders, massage functions, and enough buttons to confuse a NASA engineer. Petty? Absolutely. Worth it. Every single massage setting confirmed it. You know what they say about the devil being in the details? Well, they're absolutely right. And lucky for me, I'd spent the last few years being absolutely anal retentive about every single financial detail of my marriage. While Serena was busy planning her great escape with Captain Spray Tan, I was quietly making sure that every contract, every lease agreement, and every piece of legal paperwork had my signature exactly where it needed to be. See, there's this beautiful thing that happens when you're married to someone who thinks paperwork is boring and financial planning is too complicated to understand. They tend to just sign wherever you tell them to sign and trust that you're handling all the grown-up stuff properly. And Serena, bless her scheming heart, had been signing things without reading them for years. Remember that condo she and Bradley were planning to move into? The one they'd been touring last weekend while I was supposedly at my boring job, earning the money they were planning to steal? Yeah, about that. The thing is, when Serena first brought up the idea of investing in real estate about 2 years ago, I thought it was actually a pretty smart suggestion. We should buy a rental property, she'd said over dinner one night. You know, build some passive income. Be landlords. It's like free money. Free money. Right. Because being a landlord is exactly like having a money tree in your backyard that requires no maintenance, never has problems, and definitely doesn't involve getting phone calls at 2 a.m. about broken toilets. But I went along with it, because at the time I still thought we were partners building a future together. How adorably naive of me. We started looking at condos in the trendy part of downtown, the kind of neighborhood where people pay $500,000 for 800 square feet and convince themselves it's a good investment because there's a Whole Foods within walking distance. Serena fell in love with this particular unit on the 12th floor of a building that looked like it was designed by someone who really hated the concept of storage space. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and a kitchen so small you could cook dinner while simultaneously doing laundry and taking a shower. But it had character, according to Serena, and investment potential, which apparently meant it was overpriced but trendy. The asking price was $485,000 for what was essentially a very expensive studio apartment with delusions of grandeur. But Serena was convinced this was our ticket to financial freedom. Think about it, she'd said, her eyes lighting up like she'd just discovered the secret to eternal youth. We buy it, rent it out for $3,200 a month, and boom, passive income. Passive income that would barely cover the mortgage, property taxes, HOA fees, and inevitable repairs. But who was counting? Certainly not Serena, who'd never met a math problem she couldn't ignore. So we bought the damn thing. Or rather, I bought the damn thing and put both our names on some of the paperwork to make her feel included. But here's where my paranoid attention to detail paid off in ways I couldn't have imagined at the time. When we sat down with the lawyer to handle all the contracts and ownership documents, I made sure to structure everything very, very carefully. See, Serena wanted equal ownership because it was only fair, and she was going to be helping with the management. Her idea of helping with management, by the way, turned out to be choosing throw pillows and arguing with me about paint colors. But I wasn't born yesterday, and I'd heard enough horror stories about messy divorces and property disputes to cover my ass legally. So while Serena got her name on some papers to keep her happy, I made sure that the actual ownership structure gave me 51% control. Majority stake. Final say. The ability to make unilateral decisions about the property if necessary. It's just a formality, I told her when she glanced at the ownership percentages. You know how lawyers are with their technical stuff. The important thing is we're doing this together. Together. God, the irony could power a small city. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia who'd probably seen every variation of marital financial disaster, had looked at me with what I now realize was knowing approval. This structure protects both of your interests, she'd said diplomatically, and it ensures that major decisions can be made efficiently if needed. Efficiently. Patricia knew exactly what she was doing. So for the past 2 years, we'd been landlords. And by we, I mean I'd been dealing with every single problem that came up while Serena occasionally forwarded me decorating ideas from Pinterest. Broken air conditioning? My problem. Tenant complaints about the neighbors? My phone call. Lease renewals and rent increases? All me. But Serena still felt entitled to half the rental income, which she spent on her various self-care subscriptions and Bradley-related expenses. She treated that monthly rental check like it was her personal allowance. Never mind that I was the one dealing with the day-to-day reality of property management. And now, according to her little speech last night, she and Bradley were planning to move into their condo as soon as they could kick out the current tenant. They'd apparently been planning this for months, figuring they could use my stolen money to break the lease with our current tenant, renovate the place to their liking, and set up their little love nest in the heart of downtown. Their love nest. In my building, bought with my money, that I still controlled 51% of. The beautiful thing about owning a majority stake in a property is that you can make certain decisions without consulting your minority partner. Decisions like, oh, I don't know, putting the property up for sale. So this morning, after watching Bradley's car get towed away and before my coffee got cold, I called Patricia the lawyer. Good morning, her assistant answered. Law offices of Patricia Chun. Hi, this is David Mitchell. I need to speak with Patricia about selling a property. Let me check her schedule. She has an opening at 2 p.m. today. Will that work? Perfect. Tell her it's about the downtown condo, and it's somewhat urgent. Patricia, being the consummate professional she was, didn't ask questions when I explained that I needed to dissolve our rental property investment immediately. She just pulled out the ownership documents, confirmed my majority stake, and started drafting the paperwork. You'll need to notify your wife, of course, she said. But given your ownership percentage, you have the legal right to initiate this sale. How long until we can list it? I can have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. You could have a for sale sign up by tomorrow afternoon if you want it. I want it. Oh, how I want it. The really beautiful part was the timing. Our current tenant's lease was up for renewal next month, which meant we could sell the property vacant and cleaned up, maximizing its appeal to potential buyers. And given the current market, we'd probably get asking price within a week. But the absolute masterpiece was imagining Serena and Bradley's faces when they drove by their future love nest and saw the for sale sign. Picture it. They're probably planning their housewarming party, figuring out where to put Bradley's gym equipment and Serena's collection of unused yoga props, maybe even measuring windows for new curtains. And then boom, for sale by owner. I spent the rest of the afternoon filling out listing paperwork and scheduling photography for the property. The real estate photographer could come by Friday. We'd list it over the weekend, and by Monday morning, Serena and Bradley's dream home would be just another property listing on Zillow. Their future secured? More like their future foreclosed. But here's the really delicious part. By selling the property, I'd be liquidating our joint investment and splitting the proceeds according to our ownership percentages. Serena would get her 49% share, minus the various expenses and fees, of course. Which, after Patricia took her cut and we paid the capital gains taxes, would probably amount to about enough money for Serena to rent a nice studio apartment somewhere. Not exactly the downtown penthouse lifestyle she'd been planning with Bradley. The house of cards was falling, and I had the best seat in the house to watch it crumble. If you really want to understand someone's true character, don't look at how they treat you in private. Look at how they present themselves on social media. And let me tell you, Serena's Instagram account was a masterclass in fictional lifestyle curation. The woman could make a trip to Target look like a luxury shopping spree in Milan, complete with perfectly filtered lighting and captions about treating yourself because you're worth it. For the past 2 years, I'd been watching her transform our mundane suburban existence into what appeared to be the life of a minor celebrity. Every meal became a foodie adventure. Every workout selfie was an inspiration post about wellness journeys. Hell, she once posted a picture of our bathroom renovation with the caption, "Creating my personal spa sanctuary." The same bathroom where I'd spent 3 weekends installing tile while she supervised from the hallway and complained about the dust. But her real specialty was what I like to call aspirational lifestyle porn. You know those posts where people humble brag about their success while pretending to be relatable? Serena had turned that into an art form. She'd post pictures of designer handbags with captions like, "Sometimes you have to invest in quality pieces that will last forever, #blessed, word hit, quality over quantity." What she didn't mention was that those investment pieces were bought with money I'd earned while she was busy finding herself through various expensive hobbies. Her Instagram feed read like a highlights reel of someone else's life. Brunch at trendy restaurants every weekend, paid for by me. Yoga retreats and wellness workshops, also paid for by me. Shopping hauls featuring clothes that cost more than most people's rent. You guessed it, paid for by the guy who was apparently too boring to appreciate nice things. And her followers ate it up. She had about 3,000 people hanging on her every post, liking and commenting on her carefully curated fiction. Goals. They'd write under pictures of her morning smoothie bowl. Living your best life. They'd comment on photos of her getting mani pedis at the expensive salon downtown. You deserve everything. They'd gush when she posted about her latest purchase. You deserve everything. If only they knew how literally she'd taken that advice. But here's what really got me about Serena's social media presence. She'd somehow managed to make herself the star of our relationship story while making me completely invisible. I wasn't in any of her posts. Not one. For someone scrolling through her feed, you'd think she was some kind of independent woman boss living her dream life through her own hard work and determination. The closest I ever came to appearing in her digital world was the occasional shadow in the background of her mirror selfies, or maybe the edge of my hand in a restaurant photo when I was paying the check. I was literally the financial backbone of every single experience she posted about, but I might as well have been a ghost. A very generous, very stupid ghost who apparently existed solely to fund her lifestyle brand. And now, after cleaning out my bank account and celebrating with her new husband in my living room, she was already posting about her new chapter. This morning, while I was busy putting their dream condo up for sale, she'd uploaded a picture of champagne glasses with the caption, "Here's to new beginnings and the courage to follow your heart." Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith to get everything you've ever wanted. #new chapter, #blessed, follow your heart, #living me truth. Living her truth. Right. Her truth apparently involved grand larceny and adultery, but hey, as long as it photographed well, right? That's when I decided it was time for Serena's perfectly curated image to meet actual reality. Time for her followers to see what following your heart really looked like when it involved stealing your husband's life savings. I'd been planning to stay classy about this whole situation. Take the high road. Handle everything through lawyers and proper channels like a civilized adult. But you know what? Civilized adults don't steal $250,000 and then toast their bright future with their affair partner in the victim's living room. Civilized adults don't spend years building a fake lifestyle brand on someone else's dime and then act like they're some kind of independent success story. So I opened my own Instagram account, the one I created years ago but never used because I actually had a job and responsibilities and couldn't spend my days staging photo shoots in coffee shops. Time to give Serena's followers a little dose of reality. The photo I chose was perfect. It was a picture of me holding the property deed to our downtown condo, the same condo that now had a for sale sign in front of it. I was standing in my kitchen, the one Serena had been planning to abandon for her new love nest, holding up the legal document that proved who actually owned what in this relationship. But the caption was my masterpiece. Guess who bought herself a designer bag but forgot to check the receipts? Money with wings turns out when you spend 8 years building a life with someone, it's important to read the fine print. Some investments don't pay off the way you expect them to. #facts no filter, #read receipts, #actual yearned it, #not odathif. I tagged her in it. Because why should she miss out on the fun? I posted it at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday, right when the Instagram algorithm gods decreed that maximum engagement was possible. And then I sat back and watched the internet do what the internet does best, collectively lose its mind. The comments started rolling in within minutes. At first, it was just my handful of followers, mostly college friends and a few coworkers, trying to figure out what was happening. But then Serena's followers started finding the post, probably because she was tagged, and things got really interesting. Wait, is this about Serena? One of them wrote. Oh my God, I think her husband just exposed her on Instagram, wrote another. Someone screenshot this before it gets deleted. And they did. Oh, how they did. Within an hour, my post had been screenshot and shared to every gossip account and drama forum in our city. People were analyzing the photo like it was the Zapruder film, zooming in on the property deed, cross-referencing it with Serena's posts about their future home. The really beautiful part was watching Serena's carefully constructed narrative fall apart in real time. People started going back through her old posts with new context, commenting things like, "So who actually paid for this? And this hits different now that we know the truth." Her New Beginnings post suddenly looked a lot less inspiring when people realized those champagne glasses were probably bought with stolen money. The designer bags she'd been flaunting for months became evidence of financial manipulation rather than personal success. Every blessed and grateful caption now read like a confession. But my absolute favorite comment came from someone named at Truthdeller 2024. Imagine being so bold that you steal your husband's life savings and then post about it on Instagram like you're some kind of inspirational success story. The audacity is actually impressive. The audacity was impressive, but not nearly as impressive as the speed with which karma was about to catch up with both of them. By 5 p.m., my post had over 500 comments and had been shared more times than Serena's most popular selfie. Her phone was probably buzzing so much she couldn't use it. Her carefully curated image was crumbling faster than Bradley's credit score. And the best part? This was just the beginning. You know that scene in disaster movies where everything seems fine on the surface, but the camera slowly zooms out to reveal that the ship is actually sinking, the building is on fire, or the asteroid is about to hit Earth. That's exactly what it felt like watching Serena and Bradley's New Beginning play out over the next few weeks. From my perspective, safely removed from the chaos with a front row seat and unlimited popcorn, it was better than any reality TV show ever produced. The beautiful thing about watching someone else's life implode is that you don't have to do anything except sit back and let physics take its course. Newton's third law in action. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And boy, were Serena and Bradley about to experience some serious opposite reactions. It started with the little things. The kind of cracks in the foundation that you don't notice until water starts seeping through the walls. 3 days after my Instagram post went viral, and yes, it absolutely went viral in our little corner of the internet, I got a text from my credit card company. Alert! Payment declined for account ending in 4827. Please contact customer service. Account ending in 4827. That was the joint credit card that Serena had used for her business expenses, which, as far as I could tell, was a very loose term that included everything from organic kombucha to those ridiculously expensive workout leggings that supposedly made your butt look better, but actually just made your bank account look worse. I'd canceled the card 2 days ago, along with every other financial lifeline that connected me to their sinking ship. But apparently, Serena hadn't gotten the memo. Or more likely, she'd gotten the memo but assumed it was some kind of mistake that would sort itself out once she explained to customer service that she was very important, and this was obviously an error. 20 minutes later, another text. This time from our joint checking account. The empty one that used to hold $250,000 before Serena decided it would look better in her personal account. Alert! Overdraft fee charged to account ending in 9432. Current balance, minus $35.00. Overdraft. They tried to spend money that didn't exist. Again, I could practically picture the scene. Serena and Bradley at some trendy restaurant, probably celebrating their successful heist, only to have their card declined in front of a server who now knew they couldn't afford the artisanal toast they'd just ordered. But the real entertainment started when the utilities began shutting off. See, while Serena had been busy planning her great escape and Bradley had been practicing his smoldering looks in my bathroom mirror, I'd been quietly removing myself from every shared financial obligation we'd accumulated over the years. The electricity bill that had been automatically charging my credit card? Canceled. The gas bill that came out of our joint checking? Redirected to nowhere. The water bill that I'd been paying manually each month because Serena found utility management too stressful? Well, let's just say the city water department was about to become very interested in collecting some overdue payments. I found out about the electricity situation through a neighbor. Mrs. Patterson from next door called me at work on Thursday afternoon, sounding concerned. David, honey, is everything okay at your house? I noticed there weren't any lights on last night, and Serena was sitting in her car in the driveway for a really long time. Sitting in her car. Because the house had no power. Because the electric company had finally tired of sending bills to an account that no longer existed and had done what utility companies do when people don't pay their bills. They cut the cord. Literally. Oh, we're having some electrical work done, I told Mrs. Patterson, which wasn't technically a lie. The electrical work just happened to involve disconnecting service rather than installing new fixtures. Well, if you need anything, just let me know. I saw that nice young man of hers trying to use my garden hose yesterday. Something about the water being turned off. The water too. Perfect. Nothing kills the romance of a torrid affair quite like having to brush your teeth with bottled water and bathe with a garden hose borrowed from the neighbors. I almost felt bad for Mrs. Patterson, who was about to become unwillingly involved in Serena and Bradley's descent into domestic chaos. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. Remember Bradley's grand dreams of entrepreneurship? The business ventures he was always talking about at parties, usually involving crypto or drop shipping or some other get-rich-quick scheme that required just a small initial investment? Well, it turns out those dreams were a lot easier to pursue when someone else was providing the financial foundation. I found out about Bradley's business troubles through a mutual acquaintance who worked at the bank. Apparently, Bradley had co-signed for several business loans over the past year, all of which required a guarantor with actual assets and steady income. Guess who that guarantor was? That's right, me. The boring guy who would have just wasted the money anyway had apparently been valuable enough to serve as financial backup for Bradley's entrepreneurial fantasies. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife and serve it for dinner. So when I called the bank to remove myself as guarantor from loans I'd never agreed to be part of, because apparently Serena had been forging my signature on financial documents, which added identity theft to her growing list of crimes, Bradley's business empire suddenly found itself without its safety net. The calls started coming in on Friday. Loan officers, creditors, business partners who'd been promised payments that were supposed to come from Bradley's guaranteed funding source. One particularly entertaining call came from someone named Derek, who claimed Bradley owed him $15,000 for cryptocurrency consulting services, which sounded like the kind of scam that people fall for when they're desperate to look like they know what they're doing. Look, man, Derek said when I explained that I was no longer financially responsible for Bradley's decisions. He told me you were backing his place. Said you were some kind of silent partner in his investment portfolio. Silent partner. Right. I was about as much Bradley's silent partner as I was the Tooth Fairy. But it was fascinating to learn that my stolen money had apparently been earmarked for Bradley's various business ventures, which seemed to involve a lot of consultation fees and very little actual business. By the weekend, their financial house of cards wasn't just falling, it was collapsing in spectacular fashion. No electricity, no water, no internet, maxed out credit cards, and a growing list of people who wanted money that Bradley had promised but couldn't deliver. And through it all, I sat in my newly comfortable reclining chair, the one I'd bought with proceeds from selling Bradley's beloved BMW, watching the chaos unfold like it was the season finale of my favorite show. Except this show was better than anything Hollywood could produce, because it was real, it was happening to people who absolutely deserved it, and I had the best seat in the house. The best part was that I didn't have to lift a finger. Karma was handling everything with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker and the ruthlessness of a loan shark. All I had to do was sit back, enjoy my popcorn, and wait for the next act to begin. And trust me, the next act was going to be even better than the first. There's something deeply satisfying about watching people who once treated you like garbage suddenly realize they need your help. It's like watching a nature documentary about predators who've suddenly found themselves at the bottom of the food chain, frantically trying to negotiate with the prey they used to hunt. The desperation is almost poetic in its irony. The messages started trickling in on Sunday morning. I was sitting in my magnificent new recliner. Seriously, this thing had more settings than a NASA control panel. Enjoying my first peaceful weekend in months, when my phone started buzzing with the digital equivalent of white flags being waved. The first one came from Serena at 8:23 a.m., which was impressive considering she usually didn't wake up before noon on weekends unless there was a brunch reservation involved. Hey, can we talk? I think there's been some misunderstandings that we should clear up. Let's not make this ugly. We can work this out like adults. Misunderstandings. Right. Like accidentally stealing $250,000 was just some kind of communication breakdown. Like celebrating your theft with your lover in the victim's living room was just a cultural misunderstanding that could be resolved with a polite conversation over coffee. I stared at the message for exactly 30 seconds, then set my phone aside and went back to my coffee. If Serena wanted to talk, she could start with an explanation of which part of grand theft auto and adultery constituted a misunderstanding. But she wasn't done. Oh no, Serena was just getting warmed up. 8:47 a.m. David, I know you're angry, but we had something special. Don't throw it all away over money. We can fix this. Don't throw it all away over money. The money she'd stolen. The money she'd used to fund her escape plan with another man. But sure, I was the one throwing things away. 9:15 a.m. I made a mistake, okay? But people make mistakes. That's what marriage is about. Forgiveness and working through problems together. Working through problems together. Like the problem where she'd been cheating on me for months, and the other problem where she'd cleaned out our life savings, and the additional problem where she'd brought her boyfriend into our house to celebrate stealing from me. Yeah, those were definitely problems we could work through together, preferably in couples therapy with a good lawyer present. But my absolute favorite came at 9:32 a.m. Bradley says you're being unreasonable. This isn't like you. You're usually so understanding and practical. Can't we just sit down and talk about this rationally? Bradley says I'm being unreasonable. The same Bradley who'd been driving around in a car that was legally mine while sleeping with my wife and spending my money. The same Bradley who'd told me I would have wasted my own money anyway. That Bradley thought I was being unreasonable for objecting to their theft and betrayal. I almost laughed out loud. Actually, I did laugh out loud. Mrs. Patterson probably thought I was having some kind of breakdown, cackling alone in my living room at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. But the sheer audacity of Bradley calling me unreasonable was comedy gold. The messages kept coming throughout the morning, each one more desperate than the last. It was like watching someone slowly realize that their parachute wasn't going to open and frantically trying to reason with gravity. By noon, Serena had moved on to guilt trips. I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything we've been through together. I thought you loved me. After everything we've been through together. Right. Like that time she spent my money on yoga retreats while I worked overtime. Or that magical period when she convinced me to co-sign for her boyfriend's car. Or the unforgettable moment when she drained our savings account and celebrated with champagne. Such beautiful memories to cherish. But the real entertainment started when Bradley decided to get involved directly. His first message arrived at 1:47 p.m., and it was a masterpiece of misguided masculine posturing. Hey bro, let's man up and handle this situation like adults. What's done is done. No point in making things harder for everyone involved. Be the bigger man here. Bro. The same guy who'd called me naive and said I would have wasted my own money was now calling me bro and asking me to be the bigger man. The guy who'd been sleeping with my wife was suddenly interested in handling things like adults. I screenshot that message and saved it to a special folder I'd created called Audacity Hall of Fame. It was going to be the crown jewel of my collection. But Bradley wasn't finished. Oh no, he was just getting started on what I can only describe as the worst negotiation strategy in the history of human communication. 2:15 p.m. Look, I get that you're upset, but Serena and I are in love. Real love. You can't fight that. Be happy for us, and let's move forward. Be happy for them. Be happy for the woman who'd robbed me and the man who'd helped her do it. Be happy that they'd found true love through theft and betrayal. Sure, absolutely. Let me throw them a parade while I'm at it. 2:33 p.m. We both know this marriage was over anyway. You guys weren't happy. I'm just helping Serena live her truth. You should be thanking me for setting you both free. I should be thanking him for stealing my wife and my money. for turning my life upside down, for forcing me to discover that the person I'd been married to for 5 years was capable of sociopathic levels of selfishness. Yes, Bradley, truly, I owed you a debt of gratitude for this enlightening experience. But my absolute favorite Bradley message came at 3:02 p.m. Men like us need to stick together. You understand business, right? This is just business. Nothing personal. Men like us. The assumption that we had anything in common beyond the unfortunate fact that we both slept with the same woman. The idea that theft and adultery were just business decisions that men like us should understand and respect. I was genuinely impressed by Bradley's ability to be simultaneously condescending and desperate. It takes real talent to insult someone while begging for their help at the same time. By 4 p.m., the messages were coming fast and furious from both of them. Serena had moved on to bargaining. What if we pay you back half? We could set up a payment plan. Bradley had shifted to veiled threats. You don't want to make enemies over this, man. Let's keep things friendly. Threats. From the guy who was currently living in a house with no electricity, no running water, and no internet. Wearing clothes he couldn't afford to wash because the laundromat required quarters he didn't have. The man was truly a strategic genius. But the absolute peak of the begging tour came at 5:30 p.m., when they apparently decided to coordinate their efforts. I received simultaneous messages from both of them, clearly crafted during some kind of crisis meeting in their powerless house. From Serena, please, David. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please just talk? Face to face. From Bradley. This has gone far enough. Bro, time to be reasonable. We all need to move on with our lives. I read both messages, set my phone on the side table of my magnificent recliner, and reached for the remote control. There was a Marvel movie marathon on cable, and I had nowhere else to be. I left them both on read. Because sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence, as it turns out, is the ultimate power move. It says everything you need to say without saying anything at all. And judging by the increasingly frantic messages that continued to pour in over the next few hours, they were starting to understand that lesson very clearly. There's this moment in every good revenge story where the hero finally gets to walk into the sunset, victorious and vindicated, while their enemies fade into well-deserved obscurity. Hollywood loves that moment. The final shot where justice has been served, lessons have been learned, and everyone gets exactly what they deserve. Well, let me tell you something about real life. It's actually better than the movies. 1 month after Serena and Bradley's pathetic begging tour, I was standing in the driveway of my new house. Not our house, not the house we'd dreamed about together, but my house, purchased entirely with money they never knew existed, holding the keys to my own personal fortress of solitude. And what a fortress it was. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a 2-car garage, and the kind of kitchen that would make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy. Hardwood floors throughout, a master suite with a walk-in closet bigger than most studio apartments, and a backyard that actually had space for activities that didn't involve arguing with neighbors about property lines. But the best part? The absolute crown jewel of this whole situation? I'd paid for it in cash. Full asking price, no mortgage, no monthly payments, no financial stress whatsoever. Just walked into the closing with a cashier's check and walked out with deed in hand. The real estate agent kept asking if I was sure I didn't want to finance at least part of it for tax purposes, and I kept saying no. I was quite sure I wanted to own this house free and clear. Because here's the thing about having secret accounts that your thieving wife doesn't know about. When she steals what she thinks is your life savings, you still have your actual life savings sitting safely in places she never thought to look. While Serena was busy congratulating herself on her brilliant heist, I was quietly calculating how much house I could afford with the money she couldn't steal. Turns out, I could afford a really nice house. The move itself was therapeutic in ways I hadn't expected. There's something deeply satisfying about packing up only the things that actually belong to you and leaving behind every trace of a life that was built on lies and financial manipulation. I took my books, my clothes, my laptop, and my ridiculously comfortable recliner. Everything else, all the furniture we'd bought together, all the decorative nonsense Serena had insisted we needed, all the shared possessions that represented 5 years of what I'd thought was partnership, I left behind like the debris it actually was. The only thing I took that might have surprised her was the good coffee maker. The one she'd bought with my money, but never used because she preferred her overpriced cafe lattes. Seemed like a reasonable consolation prize for years of funding someone else's lifestyle. Moving day was deliciously uneventful. No drama, no confrontations, no final showdowns in the driveway. I'd hired professional movers who showed up early, worked efficiently, and had me completely relocated by 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. By the time Serena and Bradley figured out what was happening, I was already gone, leaving behind nothing but empty rooms and a forwarding address that led directly to my lawyer's office. The new house came pre-stocked with everything I needed to start fresh. New furniture that I'd picked out myself without having to negotiate with someone whose taste ran toward expensive but impractical. A refrigerator that stayed full because I was the only one eating from it. A bathroom that didn't look like a cosmetics store had exploded in it. And blessed silence. No more arguments about money. No more passive-aggressive comments about my boring approach to financial planning. No more surprise visitors who treated my living room like their personal bachelor pad. But the real luxury was psychological. For the first time in years, I could check my bank account without that knot of anxiety in my stomach. Every penny in there was mine, earned by me, and completely safe from anyone who thought they were entitled to it. No joint accounts, no shared expenses, no financial obligations to anyone except myself. I'd automated everything to run like clockwork. Bills paid themselves, investments grew quietly in the background, and my savings account accumulated money at a pace that would have made the old me weep with joy. Turns out, when you're not subsidizing someone else's Instagram lifestyle, you can actually build real wealth pretty quickly. The house came with a security system that included cameras, motion sensors, and the kind of monitoring service that would make Fort Knox jealous. Not because I was paranoid, but because I'd learned the value of protecting what's yours from people who think they're entitled to take it. The system sent me alerts whenever anyone approached the property, complete with photos and video clips. It was like having my own personal early warning system for unwanted visitors, which came in handy about 3 weeks after I'd moved in, when Serena and Bradley apparently decided to make a house call. The security app on my phone lit up at 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Motion detected at front door. I opened the video feed to see both of them standing on my porch, looking like they'd been living rough for the past month. And they had been living rough. Word travels fast in a small city, and I'd heard through various channels that their situation had gone from bad to catastrophic pretty quickly. The house they'd been squatting in, my old house, had been foreclosed on after the utilities had been shut off for non-payment, and the neighbors had started complaining about the smell. Bradley's business ventures had collapsed entirely once his creditors realized there was no money coming from anywhere. And Serena's social media empire had crumbled after my Instagram post had gone viral and her followers had figured out she was essentially a financial predator with good lighting. They'd been staying in a series of increasingly sketchy motels, according to Mrs. Patterson, who'd become my unofficial neighborhood intelligence network. Apparently, they'd burned through whatever was left of my stolen money within 2 weeks, mostly on overpriced hotel rooms and restaurant meals because they had nowhere to cook. The $260,000 that was supposed to secure their bright future had lasted about as long as a typical Hollywood marriage. Now here they were, standing on my porch at 7:30 p.m., probably hoping to negotiate some kind of reconciliation or payment plan or whatever fantasy they'd concocted during their latest crisis meeting in a Motel 6. I watched them through the security camera for about 5 minutes. They rang the doorbell repeatedly, knocked on the door, even tried to peer through the windows like a couple of discount private investigators. Serena was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 3 days ago, and Bradley looked like he hadn't showered since his car got repossessed. Finally, I picked up my phone and activated the two-way speaker system that came with the security setup. "Can I help you folks?" I said, my voice broadcasting through the speaker next to my front door. They both jumped like they'd been electrocuted, then looked around frantically, trying to figure out where my voice was coming from. "David," Serena called out. "David, we need to talk. Please, just let us in for 5 minutes." "Sorry," I replied through the speaker, "but I don't let thieves into my house. It's a personal policy." "Come on, man," Bradley chimed in. "Don't be like this. We can work something out." I looked around my beautiful new living room, with its comfortable furniture and paid-off mortgage and complete absence of people who'd betrayed my trust, and I started laughing. Not the bitter laugh of someone who'd been wronged, but the genuine, belly-deep laugh of someone who'd realized they'd won the lottery without even buying a ticket. "You know what, Bradley?" I said through the speaker. "You were absolutely right about one thing. I would have wasted that money. I would have wasted it on a marriage that was already over, on a wife who saw me as nothing but a funding source, and on trying to build a future with people who were planning to steal it from me. So thanks for that. Thanks for forcing me to realize that the best investment I could make was in getting away from both of you." I clicked off the speaker, poured myself a glass of the good whiskey I'd bought to celebrate closing on the house, and settled into my magnificent recliner to watch the rest of the show. They stood on my porch for another 10 minutes, ringing the bell and knocking, probably hoping I'd change my mind, and let them in to explain how this was all just a big misunderstanding that we could fix if we all just tried hard enough. But I was done trying, done fixing, done pretending that theft and betrayal were relationship problems that could be solved with better communication. They thought they'd stolen my future. In reality, they bought me my freedom. And honestly, that was the best $260,000 I never spent.